The heavy wooden door slammed shut with a finality that shattered the quiet suburban evening in small-town Ohio, leaving 17-year-old Jason Thompson standing on the porch steps with nothing but a backpack slung over his shoulder and a broken heart. "Don't ever come back here, you. Hear me?" His father Robert had roared, his face twisted in disgust after Jason had finally mustered the courage to say the words, "I am gay." Jason stood frozen for a moment, the echo of those words cutting deeper than any physical blow ever could. His hands shook as he adjusted the strap, feeling the weight of a few clothes and notebook, and the last photo of his mother who had died when he was 10. The house behind the door had been his entire world, the place where Robert had taught him to fix cars and cook simple meals on weekends, yet in one conversation, it had become a prison he could no longer stay in. Jason turned and walked down the cracked sidewalk, the late afternoon sun still bright enough to warm his back, even as his chest felt ice cold. Neighbors peeked from windows, but no one stepped out to help. He remembered the argument in vivid flashes, how he had sat Robert down in the living room after months of hiding text messages from a boy at school. The confession had spilled out in a rush, and Robert had exploded, calling it a phase, a choice, a betrayal of everything he had raised Jason to be. "No son of mine lives like that," Robert had shouted, pointing at the door. Jason had tried to explain it was not a choice, it was who he was, but the words bounced off like rain on concrete. Now, as he reached the end of the block, the reality sank and he had nowhere to go. He spent the first hours walking aimlessly through the familiar streets where he had played basketball as a kid, passing the diner where Robert used to take him for burgers on Fridays. Each step brought a new wave of questions. Was he really broken like his father said? Would he ever feel safe again? By nightfall, hunger gnawed at him, and he found a bench in the town park, curling up under a thin jacket as the temperature dropped. Sleep came in fits, filled with dreams of his mother's gentle voice telling him he was enough. Morning brought dew on his clothes and a resolve he did not know he possessed. He used the last of his cash for a bus ticket heading toward Chicago, where he had read online there were places for kids like him. The ride was long, and he stared out the window, watching fields turn to highways, wondering if Robert was already regretting the words or if the door would stay shut forever. In Chicago, he stepped off into a bustling station, the energy overwhelming, yet strangely alive. He asked directions at a help desk and found his way to a youth shelter on the south side. The counselor there, a kind woman named Maria, listened without judgment and gave him a cot and a warm meal. That night in the shared room, Jason lay awake, listening to the quiet breathing of other boys, each with their own stories of rejection. He pulled out his notebook and wrote the first entry of what would become his journal of survival. "I don't know who I am yet, but I know I am not," what he said. The days blurred into a rhythm of group meetings, job applications, and small victories like landing a dishwashing gig at a diner near the shelter. Yet every time he passed a father and son on the street, the ache returned sharp and unrelenting. Jason pushed through the loneliness by focusing on one day at a time, learning to navigate public transit, avoiding stares when he mentioned his situation, and slowly accepting that this was his new reality. The shelter became a temporary home, but he knew he needed more stability. By the end of the month, he'd enrolled in a GED program at a community center, vowing to finish what high school had cut short. The inner voice of doubt, his father's voice, still whispered at night, but Jason answered it with quiet determination. He was not going back. He would build something better, even if it meant doing it alone. The sun rose bright each morning over the lake, reminding him that light could still find its way through the cracks. Jason walked taller, telling himself that survival was the first step toward whatever came next. Weeks turned into months in Chicago, and Jason learned the hard edges of independence, the way hunger could sharpen focus and rejection could build armor. He worked double shifts at the diner, wiping tables and dodging questions from coworkers who noticed his youth and silence. One evening, after a particularly long day, a customer left a generous tip with a note that read, "Keep going, kid." Jason pocketed it, feeling a spark of hope amid the exhaustion. The shelter had rules, and he knew his time there was limited, so he saved every penny for a shared apartment listing he found on a community board. The place was cramped in a rough neighborhood, but it was his first taste of freedom. Roommates were two older guys struggling with their own issues, and they left him mostly alone, which suited Jason fine. Nights were still hard, filled with memories of Robert slamming cabinets and the way his voice had cracked on the word disappointed. Jason started attending support groups at the LGBTQ center downtown, where stories from others mirrored his own, giving him language for the shame he carried. He spoke little at first, but listening helped him see he was not alone in the world. One afternoon during a break between shifts, he sat by Lake Michigan, the water sparkling under full sunlight, and let himself imagine a future where he did not flinch at the word gay. The GED classes were tough, balancing them with work left little room for rest, but Jason pushed through, studying late under the dim bulb in his room. Teachers noticed his quiet focus, and one encouraged him to apply for a scholarship at the local community college. The application process stirred fresh anxiety. What if they saw his story and turned him away like his father had? Yet he submitted it anyway. Money was tight, and Jason skipped meals to afford textbooks. When the acceptance letter arrived, he allowed himself a small celebration, a cheap coffee at a corner shop. The first semester brought new challenges, navigating campus, feeling out of place among peers who seemed to have families waiting at home. He avoided parties where questions about parents might arise and focused on classes in psychology, hoping to understand his own mind better. Prejudice showed up in subtle ways, a classmate muttering slurs under his breath during a group project, or a professor who seemed uncomfortable with certain topics. Jason confronted it, quietly standing his ground without raising his voice, learning that strength did not always roar. Back at the apartment, he journaled about the small wins, like acing a test or making a casual friend in study hall. The loneliness lingered, but it no longer swallowed him whole. One weekend, he volunteered at a food drive for the shelter that had helped him, and the gratitude in the eyes of new arrivals reminded him why he kept going. Robert never called, never searched, at least not that Jason knew, and the silence became its own kind of weight. Jason wondered if his father ever sat alone in that big house, regretting the door he had closed. The thought brought no satisfaction, only a hollow sadness. As winter approached with its bright cold days, Jason bought a warmer coat and kept moving forward one step at a time. The city lights reflected on the lake each evening, promising that even in the darkest moments, dawn would come again, full and bright. Community college opened doors Jason had never imagined, and with them came the first real friend who saw him completely. Adam Rivera sat 2 rows behind him in introductory sociology, a confident 20-year-old with an easy smile and a backpack covered in pride stickers. Their first conversation happened during a group assignment when Adam leaned over and asked if Jason had ideas for the presentation. Jason hesitated, but Adam's genuine interest broke through the walls he had built. They worked late in the library, trading notes and stories, Adam sharing how his own family had struggled to accept him, but eventually came around after years of talks. Jason listened more than he spoke at first, the idea of acceptance feeling foreign. As weeks passed, their study sessions turned into walks around campus under the bright midday sun. Adam introduced Jason to the campus LGBTQ Alliance, where discussions ranged from policy to personal growth. Jason shared fragments of his expulsion, the pain still raw, but speaking it aloud lightened the load. Adam never pushed, only offered quiet support, like bringing an extra sandwich on long days. One afternoon after class, they grabbed lunch at a food truck, the conversation flowing easily about dreams, Adam wanting to become a social worker, Jason unsure but drawn to helping others heal. The friendship felt safe, solid, in a way Jason had not known since childhood. Doubts crept in at night, though. What if Adam saw the broken parts and walked away like Robert had? Jason tested the waters by mentioning his father briefly, and Adam's response was simple: "You deserved better, man." No pity, just truth. The semester progressed with exams and projects, Jason excelling in ways that surprised him. Adam's encouragement helped him apply for a part-time job at the campus counseling office, filing papers and observing sessions. There he saw others navigating identity crises, and it mirrored his own journey, giving him perspective. Holidays approached, and Adam invited Jason to a low-key gathering at his apartment with friends from the Alliance. Jason accepted, nervous, but the evening was filled with laughter, stories, and shared meals under warm lights. No pressure, no judgment. For the first time in over a year, Jason felt seen without conditions. Back in his room, he wrote in his journal about the difference one accepting person could make. Yet the past tugged at him, memories of Robert teaching him to throw a baseball flashing unbidden. Jason wondered if his father had changed, or if the silence meant the rejection was permanent. Adam noticed the shadows and suggested they volunteer together at a youth hotline, listening to callers share their struggles. The work deepened their bond, Jason finding purpose in guiding others through similar darkness. As spring brought longer, brighter days, their friendship strengthened into something Jason could not yet name, but it felt like home. He began to believe that maybe family could be chosen, not just born into. The bond between Jason and Adam grew deeper with each shared sunrise over the lake, turning friendship into a quiet partnership built on trust and mutual respect. They spent weekends exploring Chicago neighborhoods, walking hand in hand, only in safe spaces. At first, the fear of stairs still present, but less paralyzing. Adam helped Jason navigate the paperwork for financial aid, and together, they celebrated small milestones like Jason's first A on a major paper. Conversations turned personal. Adam opening up about his own coming out and the rocky road with his parents who had eventually embraced him fully. Jason listened and slowly shared more about the night Robert had banished him, the exact words, the slammed door, the emptiness that followed. Adam held space for the pain without trying to fix it, simply saying, "You are building something beautiful now." Challenges arose as they did in any real connection. A misunderstanding flared when Adam suggested Jason reach out to Robert for closure, and Jason snapped, feeling the suggestion dismissed as hurt. They talked it through on a bench by the water, the sun warming their faces as Jason explained the wound was still too fresh. Adam apologized, and they emerged stronger, understanding that healing had its own timeline. Societal pressures tested them too, a landlord who hesitated when they applied for a better apartment together, or coworkers who whispered when they arrived at events side by side. Jason learned to respond with calm dignity, Adam teaching him that silence could be powerful, but standing tall even more so. Together, they attended workshops on resilience, and Jason started writing short essays for the campus paper about youth homelessness and identity. The feedback from readers was overwhelming, many sharing similar stories. Adam cheered him on, attending every reading with pride in his eyes. As summer arrived, they took a day trip to a nearby park, packing a picnic and talking about the future. Adam dreaming of graduate school, Jason considering full-time work in youth services. The conversation felt natural, no rush, just possibility. Back home, Jason reflected on how far he had come from the boy on the porch to a man with direction and support. The inner crisis of identity had eased, replaced by a growing sense of self-worth. Yet the absence of his father lingered like a shadow on sunny days. Jason chose not to let it define him, focusing instead on the family he was creating with Adam and friends. Their evenings often ended with quiet talks about values and dreams, solidifying the foundation they were laying. Life was not perfect, misunderstandings still happened, but each one taught them more about sacrifice and choice. Jason realized that love between men could be steady and real without needing to prove anything to the world. Success began to take shape for Jason as he graduated community college with honors and landed a full-time role at a nonprofit youth center counseling teens facing family rejection. Adam had transferred to a 4-year program nearby, and they moved into a small apartment together, the space filled with books, plants, and laughter. Jason's work brought fulfillment. He listened to stories that echoed his own, offering guidance drawn from hard-won experience. Evenings with Adam involved cooking simple meals and planning for the future, Adam pursuing his social work degree with passion. Parallel to Jason's rise, his father Robert sat alone in the Ohio house, the silence heavier each year. Robert had thrown himself into work, at first convincing himself he had done right by drawing a line. But nights brought doubt, the empty chair at the table, the photos of young Jason hidden in a drawer. He started drinking more, skipped church, and avoided neighbors who asked about his son. A coworker mentioned seeing a young man who looked like Jason on a Chicago news segment about youth programs, but Robert dismissed it. Guilt crept in during quiet moments, memories of teaching Jason to drive or attending school events. Robert began searching online for support groups for parents, but pride kept him from attending. Health issues emerged, high blood pressure, and fatigue, doctors warning him to slow down. He wondered if Jason was thriving or struggling, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. Jason, meanwhile, faced his own tests at the center. A case of a teen kicked out reminded him too closely of his past, triggering nightmares. Adam stayed up talking him through it, reminding Jason of his growth. They attended a pride event together, the bright banners and crowds filling Jason with a sense of belonging he had never known. Work promotions followed, Jason leading workshops and publishing a short article on family reconciliation that gained local attention. The recognition felt validating, yet he wondered if Robert had seen it. The relationship with Adam deepened through shared responsibilities and quiet support during stressful weeks. A minor betrayal came when a colleague spread rumors about Jason's background, but Adam helped him confront it professionally, turning the incident into a learning moment about resilience. As years passed, Jason built a network of friends and mentors, creating the family he had lost. Robert, on his side, grew isolated, his regret manifesting in small acts like donating to LGBTQ charities anonymously. The distance between father and son stretched, but the emotional threads remained, pulling at both in unseen ways. Jason chose to focus on the present, helping others, while Adam stood as his anchor, proving that chosen paths could lead to light. Career milestones accumulated for Jason as he became program director at the youth center, his initiatives expanding services across the city. Adam completed his degree and started as a counselor at a nearby clinic, their evenings now filled with discussions about policy and impact. The relationship faced its deepest test when a misunderstanding arose over commitment. Adam, feeling Jason held back emotionally due to past wounds. They argued one bright afternoon in their living room, voices raised but never cruel. Jason admitted the fear of abandonment ran deep, and Adam shared his own insecurities. They worked through it with honest talks and couples counseling, choosing to stay and grow rather than walk away. The experience strengthened their bond, highlighting sacrifice and the courage to stay vulnerable. On Robert's side, the regret had become a constant companion. He lost his job due to health complications and spent days in the empty house staring at old albums. A private investigator he hired discreetly located Jason in Chicago, but Robert hesitated to make contact, pride and shame battling inside. He attended a support meeting, finally hearing other parents' stories that mirrored his own mistakes. The realization hit hard. He had lost years with his son over fear and ignorance. Jason received an award for community service, the ceremony held in a sunlit hall with Adam by his side. In his speech, Jason spoke generally about second chances without naming Robert, but the words carried weight. A local reporter covered it, and the article reached Ohio. Robert read it alone, tears falling as he saw the man his son had become. The action that would later torment him began forming in Jason's mind, a public talk series on forgiveness where he would share his story anonymously at first. Adam supported the idea, knowing it could bring healing or more pain. Tensions rose when Jason considered reaching out but decided against it for now, his focus on helping others take priority. Robert's health declined further, a hospital stay for heart issues leaving him alone with his thoughts. He wrote unsent letters to Jason, pouring out apologies that never reached their destination. Jason and Adam took a short vacation to the lake house of a friend, the bright days spent reflecting on their journey. The trip solidified their partnership as equals facing life together. Back home, Jason launched the first talk, drawing a crowd, including some who recognized echoes of their own families. The response was overwhelming, validating his path. Yet the absence of his father remained a quiet ache. Robert saw a clip of the talk online, and the pride mixed with remorse nearly broke him. The years of separation had taught both men lessons in loss and resilience, setting the stage for the inevitable collision of their worlds. The confrontation neither had planned arrived on a crisp autumn day when Robert finally mustered the courage to travel to Chicago, his hands trembling on the bus ride. He had seen Jason's latest talk online, the one where his son spoke of grace without bitterness, and the words had shattered the last of Robert's defenses. He arrived at the youth center during a public event, slipping into the back row unseen at first. Jason stood on stage with Adam beside him, sharing the story of a boy banished by his father and the life built afterward. The room was bright with natural light streaming through high windows. Robert listened, his heart pounding as Jason described the pain, without hatred, emphasizing choices and consequences. When the talk ended and questions began, Robert stood, his voice cracking as he asked from the audience, "Can a father ever make it right?" The room fell silent. Jason froze, recognizing the voice, instantly, the years melting away in that moment. Security moved, but Jason waved them off, stepping down to face the man who had cast him out. Adam stood close, offering silent strength. The conversation spilled into a private room, raw and unfiltered. Robert poured out years of regret, the loneliness, the health scare, the realization that his fear had cost him everything. Jason listened, the anger he expected replaced by a complex mix of sadness and pity. He spoke of the nights alone, the struggles, the slow rebuilding. Misunderstandings surfaced, Robert admitting he had searched but stopped short of contact, Jason revealing he had considered reaching out but chose self-preservation. Tears flowed under the bright overhead lights, no dramatic storm, just honest human pain. Adam mediated, gently reminding both of the growth each had shown. The meeting ended without full resolution, but with an agreement to talk again. Jason left with Adam processing the encounter, his decision to offer limited contact a pivotal act of compassion that would echo. Robert returned to his hotel room, the weight of his actions crushing, yet the glimpse of his son's strength offering a sliver of hope. Days later, Jason organized a family support session at the center, inviting Robert to observe from afar. The sight of his son helping others tore at Robert's heart, deepening the regret into something lifelong. Jason chose to share parts of his journey publicly in a new article, framing it as a story of survival and grace. The piece went viral, reaching Robert's circle and amplifying the torment of what he had lost. Adam supported Jason through the emotional aftermath, their relationship a steady anchor. The climax of years of separation had arrived not in explosion, but in quiet choices that forced both men to confront the consequences of love denied and reclaimed. The months following the reunion brought a tentative bridge between father and son built on careful steps and hard truths. Robert moved temporarily to Chicago, seeking treatment and attending sessions at the center where Jason worked. They met weekly in sunlit cafes, conversations starting awkward but growing honest. Robert shared the depth of his isolation, the way pride had blinded him to his son's worth. Jason recounted the pivotal decisions that shaped him, the choice to forgive himself first, then extend grace without erasing scars. Adam joined some meetings, his presence a model of steady support, helping navigate tensions. A misunderstanding arose when Robert pushed for more frequent contact, Jason setting boundaries that felt like rejection anew. They worked through it with mediation, Adam facilitating discussions on sacrifice and mutual respect. Jason's public talk series expanded, one event drawing Robert as a surprise attendee, where he listened to his son speak of compassion as a strength, not weakness. The audience response moved Robert to tears, the realization of his son's impact hitting like a wave. Jason's act of inviting Robert on stage for a brief acknowledgement was the moment of grace that would haunt the older man forever, the pride in his son's eyes mixed with the knowledge of years wasted. Health challenges for Robert intensified, requiring hospital stays where Jason visited, bringing Adam along. In the bright room filled with morning light, they spoke of family redefinition, Robert acknowledging the family Jason had built. Partial healing emerged through small gestures, shared meals, and honest letters. Yet full reconciliation remained a journey, not a destination, Jason choosing to maintain distance while offering ongoing support. The experience transformed both men, Jason emerging with deeper empathy, Robert with lifelong remorse that shaped his remaining days. Adam and Jason celebrated their 5th anniversary with a quiet lakeside gathering, the sun shining on the water, symbolizing the light they had found together. Robert watched from afar, invited but respecting boundaries, his regret a constant companion that drove him to advocate quietly for other families. The story of their lives wove through conflicts and awakenings, proving that actions carried consequences long after words were spoken. Jason continued his work, helping countless young people while carrying the lessons of his own path. In the end, the choices they made defined not just their relationship, but their understanding of love, forgiveness, and the courage to face the past. True or false, a single act of rejection by a parent can be fully redeemed through later remorse and effort, or does it leave permanent scars on both?